Really slowly from the lowest part of my voice. Find it.
Violin, viola, cello, double bass, viola, cello, double bass. Karina is a multidisciplinary artist, singer, musician, and medicine woman. She offers services to women and other folks as a holistic coach.
Folks might have an idea of that our bodies are in motion all the time, but even on a cellular level, the cells are in a dance or in a sound making. It's both making sound and dance because there's movement. And so there's friction and vibration and give and release happening in every cell in our bodies. And they want to be in harmony with each other.
I mean, how is that a healing experience, just having that vibration go through the body?
Healing for me right now to hear my own voice because it's a point of connection. So that's like level one. We can relate with other people. This is how we communicate. This is our points of connection with the world around us, with our friendships, with our relationships. But the actual experience of sound in our bodies is very, very deep and very physical, and science has a lot to tell us about that. The actual resonance of our cells, on a very cellular level, we are vibration.
Welcome everybody to Woven Wings Live, where we bring you wisdom and tools for vibrant living. I'm Gabe Crane. I'm joined as always by my co-host Rahul Deedwania. And if you enjoy listening to us, please share our work with a friend. You can leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can follow along on our journey by joining our newsletter, which is linked in the show description. Whether you're watching us on video or listening to us on audio, thank you so much for joining us today. And our episode today is called Healing Through Our Voice, an intro to voice witnessing. And our guest is sound healing practitioner Karina Renner. And this is kind of a cool build-off, Rahul, of our episode we did right at the beginning of this whole project, like 2 years ago with Bryony Greenhill, called Finding Your Voice. That's an awesome episode, amazing artist, if you want to go back and listen to some beautiful music that Bryony makes. Today, we're not just finding our voice, we are healing our voice. We're bearing witness to our voice. And I think it comes at an interesting point in our podcast journey. I think, I think back to 2 years ago when we were doing that episode with Bryony. It's like every episode just to record our voices and be here as like a, public figure with like a few people listening to our show was very, I guess, stress-inducing, I guess. Fear, bringing forward a lot of tension. I think now we've gotten into much more of a flow around this project. But I'm kind of curious for you, like, how are you coming at this episode now, a couple years later, and thinking about this experience of healing through the use of our voice?
It's a really good question, and it's crazy to me that it's been over 2 years since we did that episode, and I think when we talk about voice, there's so many layers to it, right? There's the actual sound of voice, and I know in that episode I talked about my relationship with my voice and how at times I've felt that it's weird and raspy and deep and hard to hear when there's any ambient noise, and so I can feel self-conscious about it. Or on the other hand, I get a lot of validation from it in a lot of ways, and I kind of enjoy that it's different. And people have said, "Hey, it's you have a podcaster or radio voice," and I'm like, "Oh, great, we're doing a podcast now." And so there's that level of just like level one, right? The sound of the voice, and then I think there's level two, which is the experience of the voice and like feeling it internally and the vibrations. Even right now as I'm talking, I can feel the vibrations through my body, and I'm excited to explore that kind of esoteric concept today. And then the third one, and one I know we talked a little bit about in that episode, and I'm sure we'll touch on today, is I think what you were alluding to, Gabe, right? The kind of the metaphorical voice, right? And voice just as a form of expression and feeling comfortable with that. And remembering 2 years ago, there was a much lower level of comfort than there is now, right? And I think we continue to grow. We continue to find new ways to tackle the topics that we do, connect with each other, share our opinions, but definitely feeling more confident, trusting myself, trusting our process and our dynamic, feeling more confident, but also more humble, just by this whole process and observing that trajectory. And yeah, I agree with you. It's just a great time to come back to this topic and look at it from a new angle.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have time today to get into some of the spiritual or deeper dimensions of the voice as a healing vehicle, a healing mechanism. But I think also on a more straightforward, superficial level, there's like two kinds of people in the world: people who sing karaoke and people who are terrified of anything related with karaoke and want nothing to do with it. And that's actually an angle I'm coming into this show today with, because I'm more in the latter camp. I very, self-conscious around or embarrassed, like being in a group of people and like get up and sing a song. I'm like, how is that fun? Like, how is this going to be a good time? But I also, of course, long to do that. Like I see that and feel that urge. And maybe a month ago, I was with a group of friends and family here in Maui where they were doing karaoke at the beach. We're having like a Sunday afternoon barbecue. And I found myself like actually doing that and getting up and like singing and, doing a Sublime song and like some reggae music. And it,
Sublime.
oh man,
Nice.
going back. Yeah, that
I
was a
love it.
hit. Sublime was a hit with the crowd.
Yeah.
And what I felt, it was, I think anyone who's gotten up, and kind of gotten over their fears to sing a karaoke song or get on an open mic, right? Or, get up and be in front of people and using your voice. I felt so much intimidation and fear, like resistance. I felt so self-conscious. And as I became more comfortable, I kind of opened up into that more, and it kind of flowed out. And it was very cathartic. Like there was just something that was so nice to feel inside myself, of something about that energy flowing out, the give and response from the folks listening, allowing myself to be able to flow. And so that's a reference point for me in today's conversation. And if you're listening to this, I hope that there's maybe something, whether you ended up in that moment where you ended up getting up and doing that, or you thought about doing it, or you just made contact with the fact that you were terrified to actually consider that. I think that could be a great place to kind of anchor your own engagement with today's content. And so, on that note, I do want to introduce our guest, Karina. Karina is a multidisciplinary artist, singer, musician, and medicine woman. She offers services to women and other folks as a holistic coach. She's a certified practitioner of sound healing and a practitioner of yoga in a variety of forms. And Karina is currently focused in service of our little ones in the world and early childhood education and mothering two wonderful children. I know Karina from my childhood, so I'm really grateful for that long-term connection coming in here today. Karina, thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
It's really great to have you here, Karina. And I think as just like a starting point to our conversation, I'd like to go to this experience of sound moving through the body, like the vibratory experience of the sound, or if I make, I have to make a vibration, right? If I open my voice and make a sound, it's like vibrating my throat, my chest. How is that healing? So if we talk about sound healing, how is that a healing experience, just having that vibration go through the body?
Sure. I'd love to talk about that. I'm also glad that you both started with a little bit of your personal relationships with your voices, because I was going to ask you both to tell me about how is your relationship with your voice. That's one of my first questions with my, with my people that I accompany with clients. Or I almost said patients, because in where I live in Peru, we use the word paciente instead of cliente, client, when we're doing therapeutic work. But I don't really love it, so I usually just say like someone I'm accompanying. And so I was going to ask you about your personal stories. So I'm really grateful I got a little glimpse into that. And it's amazing how personal our voices are. I was just thinking about how they're like a thumbprint, a fingerprint for each of us, but even more unique because each day, each moment, they can be changing. And so we can see what is my voice telling me right now? Maybe I'm feeling a little bit nervous or constricted because I'm speaking publicly or I'm speaking in front of other people, and that gives me information about my voice right now. And it also sounds just like me. It's only Karina's voice, and you can recognize it. Anyway, so it's healing for me right now to hear my own voice because it's a point of connection. So that's like level one. We can relate with other people. This is how we communicate. This is our points of connection with the world around us, with our friendships, with our relationships. But the actual experience of sound in our bodies is very, very deep and very physical, and science has a lot to tell us about that. The actual resonance of our cells, on a very cellular level, we are vibration, right? I think you all have talked about this in other podcast episodes, and folks might have an idea of that our bodies are in motion all the time, but even on a cellular level, the cells are in a dance or in a sound making. It's both making sound and dance because there's movement. And so there's friction and vibration and give and release happening in every cell in our bodies. And they want to be in harmony with each other. So, yeah, I mean, on a basic level, our body's health and wellness is seeking harmony. And there are cellular functions of releasing gas called nitric oxide. That's different than nitrous oxide, but there's this nitric oxide, which is a very important molecule in cellular functioning, especially in immune cells and also cardiovascular cells. It's been researched that you can stimulate the experience of, or the release and emission of nitric oxide in these different cells with the use of sound. But all of our cells are doing, it's like how cells communicate. They're releasing information in the form of chemicals and communicating with each other. And this is one of the gases that gets released. And it has a lot to do with our relaxation response and immune system response. And so there's this really, really interesting research that I know of through my teacher, John Bolio, who is the pioneer of human tuning forks, of using tuning forks for healing. And he and a team of scientists did all this research on how sound stimulating outside of the body, but also internally with the voice, can stimulate the release and the correct response, or the correct ebb and flow of this gas, nitric oxide, which helps the body go into relaxation response. And that's the side of our nervous system where we can rest and digest, where we can heal. So on a cellular level, that's how sound functions. That's how it heals our bodies. Our cells want to be relaxed as much as possible. Like, our nervous system wants to be relaxed. Our immune system wants to be relaxed when there's not a clear and present danger. But here in modern society, with all the stimulation that we have and not enough physical activity, all these other issues that get in the way of our natural harmonic functioning, our bodies think that we're chronically stressed. And so we're not given that relaxation response enough. And so sound in this modern day is extremely helpful to help us remember who we are and help our bodies remember what to do correctly, how to function.
Yeah, thank you, Karina, for that overview. And one of the things you said earlier was reminding me of this Hindi song in which the premise of it, the chorus of it is, time passes, you age, you lose your mobility, your eyesight, this and that, but your voice remains as your signature, right? The thing that people can recognize you by. And I was just remembering that as you were talking about that.
But
and this point around healing that you brought up, thank you for grounding that. So the thing that it was reminding me of is the idea of Om, right? Which in like Hindu philosophy and thinking, there's this idea of a universal sound, right? That's present throughout the universe. It's foundational. It's this idea of like Om is the sound, and a lot of meditation and prayer will start with or end with or feature that sound, and the attention is put on the vibratory nature, of that sound and what it does for your mind, for your body, for your soul. And what I'm hearing from you is that that sound, that voice has a healing property for not just in the metaphorical sense, which is maybe where my mind had initially gone, but physiologically, like your body is actually responding to sound, and it's relaxing the body. It's allowing it to release certain things. It's also stimulating an immune response. The question I have then is it just any sound, or when we talk about resonant sound, like what is that, right? What is it? What is the nature of the sound that will actually produce that response, or is it anything?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I like that question. Well, yeah, I mean, this specific teacher, John Bolio, would say that any sound is healing. All sound is healing. And I tend to agree with that, because our bodies try to entrain with sounds around us and find harmony. So automatically there is a good response, even though sometimes we have associations with really tough negative sounds. But next time you hear a car alarm, for instance, or your kid screaming, if you join your voice with it and try to find some amount of harmony, or just make a similar sound, like the car alarm is going, wee,
Wah,
wee,
wah, 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 wah,
you go,
wah.
wah, wah, wah. It automatically relaxes you and stops the freak out response. There is a level of relaxation that I find when I
Wait, just to clarify.
with,
So then when my son is screaming, then do I just go, ah? in response to him? Like, is that the way to like resolve that situation?
It's an experiment to try. It couldn't hurt more than having to hear it. I think that we put resistance to sound, but that's more mental, and that's more through our patterning as adults and trauma patterns and little t traumas and just the stress of wanting to resist our feelings because we're not really in our bodies most of the time. But I love what you said, Rahul, that like you think of voice or you think of sound as this more spiritual thing, and how incredible that in our bodies we have a thing that produces sound that connects us to a universal sound, or a sound that was at the beginning of time, the beginning of existence. And so that's why for me the voice is the beginning of the spiritual levels of consciousness coming up from the body. The voice is our connection with the divine. And so that's why for me it's a lifelong practice, and there's so much always to feel and discover here. Yeah, it's really beautiful that you connect with it in that way. And I was even going to add something else about before the Om, before the universal sound, there's this concept of the unstruck sound, the anahat nad, because nada is sound, and the nad is the anahat nad is the unstruck sound, and it's the idea of the void, or the soundless space. We could think of it as the timeless, spaceless moments before the Big Bang. But there's the concept of both a universal sound and the void being both important creative aspects.
So there's like kind of there's this sonic potential, like underneath the Om, or like an unsung chord. So I don't want to lose track too much of that kind of everyday example or experience, where the rubber meets the road, and we kind of translate this into, the karaoke at the park, the speaking up in your everyday experiences and lives. So I want to make sure that we kind of keep that thread weaving through this, but because you have, the two of you just gone very cosmic and talked about ohms and like, unstruck chords blazing in the universe somewhere. Can we just fill that picture in a little bit more, which is this idea of the throat chakra, or of the voice as a medium or mechanism between, I don't know, like an upper world or a lower world. Again, like if you're listening to this, maybe this is really interesting to you. Maybe it feels like really far out. Again, I want to bring it back to how it matters for each of us, but I think that'd be helpful to understand that piece of the puzzle a little bit more.
Yeah, I think in today's kind of online psychological like influencers, the influencer psychologists and other spiritual influencers, we might hear them talk about the throat chakra a lot. And I don't profess to be a master, or scholar in the chakra systems, but I do basically understand and feel in my daily life that there's these energy centers in our bodies. And we know through history anthropologically that lots of different traditions, lots of different systems of medicine and just understanding the world, mapping our bodies throughout the world. These ancient traditions all have maps of a chakra system. Some of them have 6 energy centers, some of them have 9 or 8 or up to 11 and 12. Nowadays, the new age and the modern energy medicine people or energy scientists, it goes between both like very new age lay people to very serious energy workers and people that study physics talk about 12 chakra system. That basically includes, the body chakras, that includes the throat chakra and the heart chakra that you probably have heard of, and the whole auric field. So there's like chakra centers also that relate to these different layers of our energetic bodies. So you can think of when you ground into the earth, or you do meditation to ground, you can imagine an energy center below you that's where you ground into the earth. And that's like maybe, I forget the exact amount, but a few feet below your feet, there's an energy center that you can maybe more easily feel than being able to feel into the center of the earth, kind of far away. But anyway, so yeah, the throat chakra is thought of as the zone of communication and creative expression. It's also kind of the final physical energy center. So there's a lot of physical ailments that could be related to your chakra being out of balance at the throat. So like, I could give some examples. It can be more emotional and psychological things. I mean, pretty much all of us walk around with throat chakra issues, I want to say. And like, it's not easy to be in balance and in perfect expression. I think we could all attest to that. So there's a lot of issues that we could notice physically, like asthma or allergies, chronic sore throats or chronic throat infections, thyroid issues, or other metabolic functions that would reside in the throat area. And other things, unprocessed grief, where we might have lung issues or coughing, jaw tension, TMJ, these chronic things that are just centered in this part of the body close to the throat, may be helped by vocal work, vocal practice, sound healing, or just work on your relationship with your voice, work on your expression in the world, work with humming and stimulating the vagus nerve. I can talk more about vagal nerve theory and how important that nerve is in our body for relaxation. But yeah, lots of other conditions can point us to, like depression and anxiety as well, can point us to our throat chakra as a potential source for healing and bringing in more energy, bringing in energy flow, because the chakra is not just a point, it's not a still point. Chakras are thought of as vortices. So they're constantly moving or vibrating energy, and they can be more closed and understimulated, or they can be more open and flowing, and receiving and giving good energy. So that's an introduction, I guess, to the throat chakra. Any questions?
Yeah. No, thank you, Corinne. I mean, just to be tracking as we go here, right? I think we've started off talking about sound and the vibration and the nature of that. And, there's a whole host, it sounds like, of physiological benefits, not just the relaxation impulse or the immune system response, but all the other things you just alluded to, right? And there's a connection between voice and sound and what we experience in our bodies. And then there's the other piece around the cosmic connection, right? And the connection to the origins of the universe and universal sound and something deeper and spiritual in nature. And I think you just started to describe what some of the effects are in working with voice and with sound. And kind of, I wanted to give you a 3-part question to play with here. As it relates to that practice, and in the spirit of bringing it back to what Gabe was talking about, what is voice witnessing? When you talk about that as a concept, what does it look like for you as the therapist or the coach or the facilitator, the healer, to be working with people and helping them witness their own voice? Like, what does that process look like? And then what are the benefits that you've seen your clients or your patients, experience, whether they're adults or kids? I know you work with a whole host of people. So yeah, what is voice witnessing? What is the practice and what are the benefits?
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I'll bring in, since we talked a little bit about very physical ailments and what the cells are doing in our bodies, and also this, big, expansive, universal sound concept. There's such an emotional, psychological, day-to-day experience of our throat chakras, of the voice in the body, which is where, my conversations tend to live with my clients and with groups of people that I work with, and with myself as a singer, with other singers. Singing is an important part of my life, and sometimes I don't always connect the thread between vocal practice and my voice witnessing work with my actual singing work. And I'm like, oh, I actually need to feel my feelings right now because I'm feeling something and it's getting in the way of my singing. But we, like you were saying, Gabe, at the beginning, that we, almost all of us, get nervous or have insecurities about our voices. I don't know anyone that doesn't have specific painful memories of their lives, of their childhood mostly, or teenage years, of people saying to be quiet, to not sing out loud. Maybe you're singing in a group or in a chorus, and teachers would say, can you please lip sync because it's not good what's happening. Whatever they might have said to you, that those memories stay with each person. And each person that I work with, I ask them, hey, what's your relationship with your voice, and what are some memories that you have that have informed this relationship, that has built this identity with, I'm a good singer, I'm a bad singer, I'm tone deaf, I can't sing. I mean, so many people will just very quickly say, I can't sing. Oh yeah, don't ask me to sing, I can't. But how is that possible? You have a voice. All children sing. All children sing. No child has ever said, I can't sing, Miss Karina. Today I can't sing. Or even when they're sick, they don't say they can't sing. It doesn't, they don't notice that it might hurt them, because actually singing is probably making them feel better. When you have a sore throat, you should start singing. And that will only help, when it comes from a place of feeling and real connection with ourselves. And so when we've had so many experiences that take us away from our bodies and our creative expression as humans, just natural humans with voices, but we've been told that we can't sing, or that we sound strange, or maybe we have a higher voice or a lower voice, and it rubs them the wrong way. And one thing that one person says to you sticks there, and you say, okay, I'm not gonna do it better. I don't participate. And that informs our personalities, our relationships, how we show up in the world, and how we are able to get things done, to live, to, communicate. What more is needed? This world is so much about communication. And so if we're, insecure in our voices, we're probably not able to give and receive and be in healthy relationships, or be able to communicate our needs. I mean, so many of the women I work with have such big issues, including myself, communicating a solid yes and a solid no, or no without apologies. I mean, that's a huge thing. And it's been really healing sometimes to just practice singing the word no, and feeling how no feels vibrating in my body. And that's really powerful, especially for trauma survivors, physical abuse and sexual trauma survivors. Feels so good to hold a little space for those memories, those feelings, and say no, or say other mantras or other words that come up to be sung into the past and future, into the body, and say, I can say no now as my present self. and those types of things. So it's always been really powerful to witness moments of unlocking and healing. I mean, it just feels healing for me. I get to witness people, and so that's part of the phrase of true voice witnessing, or voice witnessing, is that we each get to witness ourselves, but also we can be witness to each other. So the practice of letting the voice out and listening to yourself is a mindfulness practice of letting the voice do what it needs to do or what it wants to do. At first, maybe more open, and then I might direct things or give, an exercise or these other layers, some music, but basically letting the voice go out of the body and vibrate, and sometimes stay more in the body, do humming. But that practice of listening to your own voice, basically, and letting it move, letting it change, letting the moment go from one moment to the next, and staying with yourself through that, I've found to be extremely healing for myself, and kind of just on one level, just a fascinating mindfulness practice. Like, instead of listening to music and letting that be my meditation, I can let my voice out and follow it and let that be my meditation.
It's so interesting, the phrase you just shared, like "let my voice out." It made me think about like when you have to take your dog out for like a walk or to go pee. You know, this other phrase came to mind as you were speaking, Karina, of living out loud. People, the desire we have to live out loud, and as you were describing our past experiences and the traumas and the blocks and the messages we get, I just get this image of, becoming enclosed and shut in, and that it's we get this message that it's not safe or appropriate to live out loud. And of course there's all sorts of different social norms and stigmas that reinforce that. There's a purpose to it, right? We don't want everyone just out yelling at cars and stuff, or something at each other.
Right. You can be
So
over
right,
expressive.
exactly right. There can be the other side of the spectrum, but I'm glad we got spiritual and talked about the throat chakra and like those kind of sheaths and those like different auric fields you were talking about, because it really made me think about the voice as this gatekeeper of it's this channel where there's like a bunch of energy like directly literally going out from me, and then that somehow kind of clears space. It creates the reciprocal communication
So
dynamic.
much
So
emotional, yeah, so much emotional
exactly, so
content, so
there's
much emotional
right, so
information.
all of that is going out and then facilitating flow of information and energy back in. And so when that's blocked, it's like you need like a plumber, to like kind of clear that line,
They'll
to
start
be
calling
able
me the
to.
vocal plumber.
Yeah, that's another option, and yeah, I mean, so am I tracking that right? I guess would be like the first thing I'm saying. Am I like I'd love just your
Yeah.
kind of response to what I was just sharing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I joked that they could call me a vocal plumber, but that's kind of what we do when we're in a safe enough environment to explore the voice, or to let the voice out for a walk and see what dance moves it has today, or see what it needs, really. And because our voices are these unique imprints of us, there I do this part of the practice called vocal mapping to see where I'm at today, see where one is at, and what the voice has to say today about how I'm feeling, what I need, what elements are more present in my body right now. Where, am I very airy or fiery or watery today? There's a lot of information just intuitively that you can hear from each other's voices. You can hear sadness, you can hear anger and frustration. You can hear what people aren't saying when they're using their voices. And so when we start listening to each other, or you have a space where, okay, Karina's not going to judge me. I'm going to go into a room with Gabe and try something out, and he's not going to judge me. It's, we're making a deal that it's for the purpose of healing. That intention setting is so important for healing as well. It's like, the belief aspect and the trust that you can have with your practitioner, so important, especially when we're dealing with our voices, because it's so vulnerable. It's like the seat of vulnerability when our voices crack, and we're trying to, or when we're teenagers and our voices crack because they're changing, that's just like automatic mark of vulnerability. And so either we shut down or we are supported enough to be brave, right? And try things. Just like you with karaoke, you were brave enough because you were with some friends and you felt comfortable enough, and then you had this cathartic experience. So beautiful.
So yeah, and so building on that, you mentioned bravery here. So with my terrified self alongside her for the ride, I think what would be cool is if we could actually try some of this stuff on the show here, and if you're listening to this at home, maybe that's exciting for you, probably some part, I would guess, and then another part is maybe intimidated or running for the exits. Luckily, you're just listening to the podcast, so you get to decide whatever you feel like doing. You can do this or not, but I think this is we want to create a space where you can actually try some of this stuff out and get a verified response from your own experience to what's being talked about here.
That's right. Maybe we'll start with you guys, and people can witness you guys being brave and vulnerable, and sharing a bit of where your voices are at today, how you're feeling in your bodies. So I already got a little bit of a sense of your like general historical relationships with your voices. So that's interesting. It's good information for me to have as your friendly local voice practitioner. Not so local, I guess. So you want to try some exercises? Try something?
Let's give it a go.
Try some vocal mapping. So I'll give a very brief little example of basically a siren that you can do that people I know from my musical theater days and from other voice training days. They used to have us try to do a perfect, beautiful siren from the lowest part of your register to the highest, like the lowest part of your voice to the highest, finest part of your voice and back down. And we would have to do it in a certain way. But this is an open siren. So you guys can both try. I'll give my brief example of where my voice is at today. So this is what we'll do for a vocal map of where I'm at. And I can go nice and slow. There's no rush. And I'm going to go really slowly from the lowest part of my voice. Find it. So as many breaths as it takes, any syllable or sound that you want to make, and any textures that come out are fine. Just kind of keep going up and up and up, and then take a breath and go back down. And I even got some interesting information just from doing that. I can tell that I'm feeling nervous because I was breathing. I was breathing so many times. So, as many times as you need to breathe as possible is fine. But you guys give it a try. Let's hear you. Breathing if you need to, and continue back down. Beautiful. beautiful journeys we just went on. Laughter is good too. And now just let the voice out with some laughter or sighing. Good. How did that feel to do?
It felt vulnerable. You mentioned like getting information. I felt like I was having responses in my body and my mind as I was watching you do the demonstration. I was like, it's like before you jump off like the high board, at the pool, you're just like, wait a minute, am I really going to do that? Oh, wait a minute. I'm starting to freak out about the possibility of that.
You plan ahead a little bit.
Yeah. And then I think what I found is like the oscillating, especially afterwards, when you just said, just let your sound out, going back and forth between pleasure of just like, oh, it feels so nice to just like, let the dog out for a walk, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, and then I just like naturally felt this like stick my tongue out and like let just like this like whole thing unfold. And then I found myself feeling self-conscious, as soon as I was like, oh, like something about that I hadn't really thought, I had no idea, but like sticking my tongue out of my mouth is like, that's not okay somehow.
Well, and I didn't
like that,
tell you.
there's issues there.
That you were allowed to move your body.
No. Yeah.
And that's really natural that when you let the voice out, the body is connected, it's also moving. It's part of it.
Right.
And so you might have a movement or an extra stretch that your body wants to do.
Well, it made me think about those like images of like Hindu deities or like Buddhist deities, like
oh yeah,
with their mouths out and with like
rad.
Oh man, that's good.
So good.
Oscillating is exactly the word that came up for me right when you asked that question, Karina, and it was very similar actually to what you described, Gabe. And I think for me, within that, there was one moment or a couple of moments of like just not thinking and like following the voice, like what you were describing earlier, Karina, like following the voice from moment to moment. And that felt really good and really present and also very fleeting because of the other accompanying feeling, which is this awareness of being on air and this awareness of being public with this voice.
People are going to hear this.
Yeah, and that was very much present as well. And I felt like I bounced between those two feelings throughout, like the entire time. And it felt like very quick, which is very interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think a lot of the time the voice witnessing practice is about lining up as closely as possible, being present inside the body and being able to let the voice out and listen at the same time. And then luckily, like the mind doesn't have much extra space to think. You're going into the experience of the sound and letting that be your focal point. Just like most meditations, you get some kind of point of focus. The focal point is the sound and the experience physically, and so the thoughts start to drop away of how does this sound to other people, and you let yourself receive the sound and be nourished by whatever information there is, or be curious about it and say, oh, what does it want to do now? Oh, why do I have this gravelly sound? Let me just explore that a little bit further and see where it turns and where it might soften and where it might get harder. And you just start to get really curious about what the information is and how it feels. And your body then kind of takes over and says, oh, I want to feel this. I want to feel this now. And that pleasure that you can experience is huge. I mean, it's a very pleasurable, relaxing practice that I can get lost in for, 20 minutes to an hour without blinking an eye, without getting distracted by my emails. Once you start, once you drop in, and usually it takes like 5, 10, 20 minutes to really get into a different state. And then it can feel more like a meditation practice or, experiential. Yeah.
And just to clarify on that, this idea of getting information, that what you're talking about there is like a thought that comes up, right? Or a
Or an
feeling
image.
or a memory or an image. That's the information
There's information,
describing
right?
here.
Psychological information, but also just sonic information. I mean, that's real. I was just thinking like
right, the graveliness,
the waves, the
tightness in your voice.
graveliness,
Right.
the textures, the airiness, the feeling of not having enough breath or having a lot of breath in my body, or, any of the different colors and textures of the actual sound of my voice. That's the information that I'm really, as a vocalist with a little bit more hours of practice in my body, that's the information that I'm really curious about, is following a melody or following a texture and letting that blossom into something else, letting that become a song and recording it, or letting that become a song that I repeat over and over again that feels like a lullaby, or these other things that can come out of that practice of just being curious about the sounds themselves.
Yeah, I feel the parallels to meditation. I mean, it's a form of meditation, right? And when we think of meditation, sitting down, taking deep breaths, focusing on the breath, or focusing on the light between our eyes, or focusing on whatever, I think so much of that is the practice of staying tuned in to whatever is coming up and the sensations, whether physical or mental or emotional. And it sounds like this is a version of that, and cultivating that or building that muscle.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like it's really good meditation for people that maybe mindfulness meditation, as it's often presented, isn't so accessible. A lot of the times people who have complex PTSD or just have an experience of, feeling triggered by past traumas, it may be a little bit difficult to sit and try to clear our minds and just focus on the breath, because we're not being given the guidance in the mindfulness practice or whatever to be connected to our bodies, and our bodies don't feel like safe places to be, and we're finding ourselves sitting and having to feel things and being in our bodies, but without much guidance or without our attention being put onto something specific in the body. And so it can be very overwhelming for people with trauma. And so for me, what I felt is that listening to my voice and just my practice of singing, just being, trying to sing, is a safe place to be in connection with my body. And it becomes a safer, zone to check things out, because there's a focus of my attention of, letting my voice out and listening to it. And there's just a feeling of vibration in my body that naturally relaxes me, that naturally makes it feel like a safer place to experience my emotional world. And so for me, having that ability or those spaces to listen to my own voice and connect with my body in a way that feels sweet and tender and safe has been hugely healing with my personal history with sexual trauma and being a survivor. I have gone in and out of my body throughout my life and mostly feel very disembodied for most of my life. I think more and more these days I'm in my body, but it's a constant, fluctuation or oscillation, right? And so this practice of letting my voice feel good and do what feels good is also a lot of the time the instruction that I will give is give yourself something that feels good, or let the voice feel good. What would feel really good right now? And wow, what what a great instruction to receive when we're not told that enough. Like, hey, pleasure, joy, fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the voice is an immediate, conduit for something fun, potentially.
So some of what I'm hearing there, Karina, is that the voice, as we were talking about before, but just to emphasize that the voice is physical, right? So it creates a vibration that gives you information back, as we discussed, and it puts you in your body naturally. You can't avoid it if you start paying attention to it. So it's easier to grasp, as you're saying, than traditional seated meditation or mindfulness practices as have become popularized these days, where you're kind of focusing on your breath or focusing on your kind of emptying your mind.
And it's usually silent, right? Usually silent.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the part that really sticks out to me, is that in traditional meditation or the mindfulness practice, you can totally bypass this whole situation. Like, as you were talking, I was imagining myself in a meditation practice and like just going silence and like kind of finding this pleasurable place, but it's all like closed up, and like I'm not opening the door at all of the challenges associated with sharing about my experience or being able to articulate what I'm experiencing, and therefore share it with somebody else, make a connection. I mean, obviously voice is not the only way we communicate with other people, but it's the primary.
No, but it's this connection point between our minds and our hearts and most of our body. So it's a place where we do feel our creative selves or our sexual selves, our bodies that we can easily forget about if we're just concentrating all of our energy and attention in the head.
So I'm curious if maybe we could go a layer deeper with our sounding and our vocal movements here. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I kind of turn it over to you, Karina. Is it something that we can do, or do you want to kind of guide our listeners through, kind of an additional exercise that they can do at home?
Yeah, I could guide you through something, Gabe, that is actually is definitely a layer deeper into the body, and luckily not very emotionally deep yet at this point, probably.
Okay, thank God. Thank God.
So
not ready to pour all my emotions out to all you guys.
Relax. But just there's an invitation to drop into the body a bit more and feel our resonators, feel our resonance in our body. And I know you guys have talked about resonance a lot, but basically just physically, it's where how sound vibrates within a space, within a structure, and the relationships of vibrations. So,
awesome.
So you can think of your body as the architecture, and we're gonna let sound resonate in your body, and people at home can try this as well with the very with very basic words from my wonderful teacher of extended vocal work. But he would tell us, so just practice saying the words first. Violin, viola, cello, double bass. Violin,
viola, cello,
double
bass.
Nice. So cello. Now I'll give an example, and then you can try it, of feeling the resonance of the violin. We're going to feel up in our cheeks and our faces. And then the viola, we're going to feel in our chests. And the cello, we're going to feel in our stomachs, our bellies. And the double bass, you're going to feel opening your buttholes. You're going to feel the resonance down into your
Did you hear that at home?
And your butthole.
Make sure you have to open your butthole for this exercise.
That's with the double bass. So get ready. I don't know if you're ready for this. So here we have our resonators. I'll do an example first for you guys. Violin, viola, cello, double bass. So you can pick a note, maybe a little lower for you guys. Violin, like around there. And just try resonating into your face with the violin, and go immediately into the chest, and then down into the belly, and then into the hips and lower body.
Okay.
Go
All right.
ahead.
Violin, viola,
Viola,
cello,
cello.
double
Double
bass.
bass.
Maybe a little lower, Rahul. You want to try?
Yeah,
Double
I felt that.
bass.
Yeah,
Violin, some
yeah.
around there. Go ahead if you want.
Both of us?
Violin.
Right?
Yeah. What was the
Try a
second?
lower
Violin,
tone. Try a lower
Oh,
tone,
okay.
Rahul.
violin,
Yeah.
violin,
Violin.
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 What's
viola.
comfortable for you, Rahul? Just find a comfortable
Yeah.
lower place for yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you smile while you say violin. So you feel it buzzing here.
Violin.
Violin,
Viola.
viola,
Cello.
cello,
Nice.
double bass.
Yeah. And when you're wanting to resonate down into your lower body, it helps to relax your stomach, relax your anus, relax your mouth and your jaw, especially. You can focus on the mouth and the jaw rather than the butthole. But relaxation, in the lower body will help you resonate and feel vibration lower into your body. So did you
I didn't
feel
I didn't
any
know that
difference?
our podcast today was going to involve like a tutorial on how to relax your butthole. But
Resonate your
if
butthole.
you listen to this point and you get certain perks and treats, if you follow us along all the way to the hour mark.
Yeah, I felt it from here down to probably my stomach, I think is where I got to, and this didn't necessarily
It's harder
drop
to
below that.
feel lower. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of practice
Yeah. Yeah.
to resonate that low. How did you feel, Gabe? Could you feel vibration in your
Uh,
body?
yes, I could. Yeah, I could feel it at different places, and just that last comment there is just it made me think about where am I generally speaking from, and speaking more from my throat or chest or head versus being down in my belly and speaking more from my belly. And it made me
Mm-hmm.
think about
Powerful.
Ren Shui, my Qigong practice, and the kind of constant ongoing practice we're doing of putting our awareness down in our belly inside Dantian, breathing in and out of the belly, that kind of accessing some of those lower registers feels connected to embodiment in general, less disassociation or like fleeing up into my head, into my thoughts.
Yeah, and it's good to have access to all of them, right?
Mm,
It is
mhm.
usually easier for us to resonate close to our throats and closer to our faces, and some people have more nasally voices. You can hear, I'm changing my voice to sound a little bit more nasally. Some people just naturally talk like that because they're resonating in their heads and in their faces and in their noses, and they may be pretty closed off from the rest of their body. So that's information that if I hear somebody with a voice that's really stuck up here, then that just means that they're probably disconnected to their bodies. And so,
Right.
and how much more power and how much more chi can flow, right? When our voices are inhabiting more space down lower. I mean, there's so much more space in the rest of our bodies than just this little space in our throats and our mouths.
Yeah,
So we can take advantage.
this is so interesting because I think the marker that I'm most used to for connecting with where I'm at is the familiar breath, right? And I think the shallow breath versus the deep breath, and then I think with voice, it's something I remember. When we were just singing in a class or something, that there was this idea that like, yeah, if you can allow your voice to come from, from a little bit lower, right?
The
You can
diaphragm or the
the
belly, we'll say, yeah.
diaphragm, exactly,
Mhm.
right, exactly. And I think so. I'm just thinking like there's the breath, there's the voice, and then completely different application, in sports, right? Like when you're swinging a bat or taking a shot or whatever, it's very easy to just be using your arms, to only be using your upper body. And really, what you want is a harmony in your movement from top to bottom, right? You actually
Hmm.
get power
Engage
from,
the hips,
yeah,
engage the
exactly, the
butthole.
hips, right? It always comes down to the hips and the legs, and you get the power there. But then there needs to be a some sort of a synchronicity, right, with the part above. And to your point, every part matters, right? And it's just a matter of accessing and channeling these
Right.
different layers.
And our breath, we need more breath in order to resonate in most of the body. Most people are disconnected from, are not breathing enough or not breathing deeply enough. And so that also affects how we sound and how we communicate, because we can only resonate here, or we have to be more internal and more timid if we're not breathing, because I can only say so much if I don't have enough air. If I'm not breathing, then this is what I sound like, and I might stumble over my words more. I might feel more nervous because there's no breath in my body. But when I feel my breath actually enter my stomach, and my belly relax, and my diaphragm is functioning correctly, I can communicate from my whole self, and you guys hear and feel a difference, right? As someone that's listening to me talk. You're more likely to
Yeah.
believe what I'm saying, feel it, connect. So it's really powerful for any public speaking work that you might have to do, or any other communication that we do in our work lives, and in everything, just to check in with where you're breathing, where your voice is. Um, that was the other thing I was going to give some invitations to folks listening to think about and carry with them, just some practical little games that they can play to check in and be able to feel more harmonized in your body, perhaps, or be able to feel a better relationship with our own voices, is like trying for yourself this vocal mapping, just to see where you're at today, and see how nervous it makes you. Or maybe if you're home alone, it's no big deal, but definitely curious to see if people enjoy doing that, because it's a little peek into how you're doing emotionally, and how your body is feeling, also physically. We can listen to our voices and see what they have to tell us.
So I'm Rahul, jump in here if you feel differently or if you have anything else you want to explore. But what I'm kind of thinking for today is it'd be nice to actually close and kind of thank Karina, and kind of give thanks to everyone for joining our show per usual, as we do at the end of every show. And then as a additional little bonus, if you have listened through this and enjoyed those exercises that we just demonstrated and can practice them on their own. I think what Karina would like to do, or what we'd like to have you do, Karina, is just take a couple minutes where you can guide our listeners through just a few minute exercise that kind of synthesizes what we worked on, maybe involves a little bit of, shruti box or like musical accompaniment, and can give you folks listening at home an opportunity to just start putting this in practice, or come back to this section of the recording, which we'll split out separately as well. And, just see as a way to actually start doing this and getting into your body. Um,
Yeah, the
how
last
did,
that
yeah.
that sounds great, Gabe. And the last two things I'll say, one is I was just thinking. I've been thinking a lot throughout this conversation about this idea that often what I believe and what I talk to people about is, if you can shift your inner state to be in alignment with how you want to feel, often what comes out in terms of what you say, how you say it, all that will just naturally reflect that inner state. And people can focus on, how do I say something? What are the right words? And I'm like, actually, the right words will find themselves if you can tune yourself internally first. But what I love about what we talked about today is the other direction, right? Which is observe what you're saying, or observe the voice, observe the ups and downs, to understand what you're feeling internally, to become aware of that. And so just really appreciate that point and that insight. And second thing I'll say, just in closing from my end, is thank you, Karina. This has been an absolute pleasure, and really appreciate your coming on here, and looking forward to your closing us out here today.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rahul. And I really resonate with what you shared. And I just personally want to share, like, this, it feels such a powerful practice, very basic, very accessible, and so many things moving in my mind, in my emotions, in my body, just through our conversation over the past hour. And it just makes me, want to make more weird sounds, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
like just get out of these kind of constrictions
Yeah.
that I experience, but I think they're pretty widespread, that we put ourselves in. And so it's really this process of liberation and freeing ourselves into a more full life, living out loud. And so,
Yeah.
I want to thank you too, Karina, for joining us. For folks listening to the episode and who follow us, thank you so much. Please share this with a friend who you think could benefit from us, from this episode. Leave us a podcast review, like our channel, like our show. And with that, let's turn it over to Karina to take us away and close us out with some voice witnessing and practice.
Okay, so I invite all of us to close our eyes if you are able to, and to feel into your seat or your stance or your posture, wherever you are. Hello, body. Nice to see you, nice to feel you. And I'm going to offer my voice witnessing practice for this day. I'll do a brief version and we can listen along. And you're also invited to let your voice out and see what sounds it wants to make. See if you want to make the same sounds that I'm making, try to follow along or harmonize or laugh or breathe or hum and receive vibration into your body, or just let your voice do whatever the heck it wants to do. And so I'm going to start with a little vocal mapping to hear where my voice is today and to explore a little bit. And then I'm going to accompany myself with this sound, this drone, it's called the Shruti box. So you'll hear that instrument. And I'm going to let the vocal mapping take me into exploration and witnessing, following threads and curiosities, and into an improvisation of probably something that sounds like music or singing, and let that be what it is, and see what there is there. Okay? So I'm going to start mapping. And now I'm following a thread that sounded interesting to me. Sariga, sariga,